Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of the Space Law and Policy podcast series. I'm your instructor, Glenn Torres-Spelliscy. Thanks for joining me. The title of this week's podcast, Dream No Small Dreams, comes from a quote that's attributed to German statesman and writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. The full quote is as follows.
Dream no small dreams, for they have no power to move the hearts of men.
And we see this concept reflected again and again throughout our culture. The idea that to progress, to move forward, we must challenge ourselves to ask the tough questions. You know, one of my favorite stories about this idea is actually a personal one. When my partner was young, her father used to take her to school on the back of his motorcycle, and he would quiz her with questions along the way. And when they got to school, he would give her one last lesson before she started the day. Remember to ask big questions. And there are perhaps no bigger questions than those that we seek to address in this course. As famed astronomer and professor at Cornell University, Carl Sagan explained at the Royal Institute's Christmas lectures way back in 1977, we are at an epochal moment in the development of our species.
Has asked questions about what is up there. Human beings are a curious, inquisitive, exploratory species. I think that has been the secret of our success as a species. These spacecraft permit us, in a halting, tentative, preliminary way, to leave the Earth and examine our surroundings in space, an enterprise which I believe is in the truest human tradition of exploration and discovery. We are, as I said, at an epochal moment. Our machines, and eventually ourselves, are going out into space. I believe that the history of our species will never again be the same. We have committed ourselves to space, and I do not think we are about to turn back. I believe the time will come when most human cultures will be engaged in an activity which we might describe as a dandelion going to seed. Artifacts from Earth are spinning out into the cosmos, and human beings will never again be restricted to this one planet.
The desire to explore and to understand our environment is at the center of the human experience. And nowhere is exploration more grand, more limitless, and more adventurous than the human exploration of outer space. The exploration of the universe will be the task of heroes, but their success will be determined by whether we, here, have an adequate structure of support in place. Are we prepared for the new world that is about to be ushered in?
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and upgraded Cargo Dragon, the first cargo capsule to dock to the International Space Station.
Over the last few decades, we have watched as private companies develop reusable rockets, dramatically lowering the cost of spaceflight. As robots built by humans crawled across borders and communed with clouds and distant asteroids and planets. And as scientists and entrepreneurs began to plot the establishment of permanent human settlements on the Moon and even our planetary neighbor Mars. This has led to an undeniable realization. The future is up. But here's the catch, the future is risky. It is unknowable by definition, and that means we have to find ways to mitigate that risk. We must prepare for and manage it. There is no question that the human ability to deploy satellites in the skies above us has fundamentally altered civilization. Our dependence on these technological marvels traveling high above us at tremendous speeds cannot be understated. But the more we launch, the more accidents there are, the more debris is created, the more congested orbits become. And if Earth's orbital space reaches a saturation point where the utility and longevity of our space assets are threatened, the results would be catastrophic and world-altering. Ensuring that we maintain our ability to launch new satellites and utilize existing ones is a critical global issue. With private space companies launching rockets to the International Space Station, carrying critical supplies and equipment as well as human passengers, a new era has dawned. Space is no longer the exclusive realm of powerful government actors. There's significant risk here too, though, despite the benefits. As more providers begin to test the limits of Earth's gravity, there is an increasing likelihood of accidents, of poor performance and injuries, both to individuals and commercial goods. Regulations must be developed to cover the risks associated with both the transport of commercial goods and space tourism. In 2015, famed astrophysicist and director of the Hayden Planetarium, Neil deGrasse Tyson, proclaimed that the first trillionaire there will ever be is the person who exploits the natural resources on asteroids. Now, there is certainly nothing wrong with the individual or corporations that bear the risk of mining space resources, reaping the reward. Indeed, basic economic theories suggest that market-based approaches that foster competition often spur innovation. Nonetheless, a basic tenet of space law is that space is to be used for the benefit of all humankind. The Outer Space Treaty explicitly provides that the exploration and use of outer space should be carried on for the benefit of all peoples, irrespective of their degree of economic or scientific development. Ensuring that the harvesting of the resources from space is carried out in a sustainable, ethical, and equitable fashion must be a top priority for policymakers and regulators over the next decades. With so much of life dependent on satellites, there is always a temptation to seek to destroy the space infrastructure of our earthly adversaries. The risks of such militarization, though, are enormous, and so far humanity has taken care not to let its conflicts bleed into outer space. That is not a guaranteed outcome, though, and we must find ways to regulate our use of space to prevent it from becoming just another battlefield. We all know the typical depiction of the frontier town, a lawless place where marauding street gangs control capital and land, often pitted against innocent townspeople and one brave lawman, and where disputes are solved by gun battles in the streets. Now, whether this is a realistic depiction of the actual era or not, the mere thought should inspire us to ensure that our space colonies don't go down that path. In that sense, human settlements on celestial bodies must be established with both a sense of adventure, for we'll never get there without it, as well as a duty to mitigate risk, for we'll never succeed unless we plan for it. It is the most dramatic, the most devastating, and the most real of the risks that we face today from space. An asteroid or comet strike causes significant damage to a major metropolitan area, if not the entire globe. This risk is an all but certainty, even though it is very unlikely at any given moment. There are hundreds of thousands of large-sized rocks that could do significant damage in our vicinity, many that we likely know about, and many that we do not. As a result, we must use human ingenuity to craft potential policy responses that can help protect the Earth from suffering the same fate of previous species who suffered extinction at the hands of a giant space rock. Now, these are generally going to be our topics that we're addressing over the course of this semester. I'll be talking about ways that our current laws and policies seek to address these risks, and whether there are ways to improve on them in order to better protect our human community. I'm very excited to be bringing you the course this year, and I'll need your help. We will largely be building this course together. You're one of the first groups that I'm teaching it to, and I'm very excited about what we're going to do this semester. If there is something that works really well or that doesn't work at all, don't hesitate to let me know. Make sure that you've read the syllabus carefully. I'd also encourage you to watch the video that I did talking about course objectives and assessments. My hope is that this course will challenge you. We're going to be thinking in a lot of different disciplines: science, law, ethics, politics, economics. Space touches all of these issues. And my hope is that this course will push you to think about some of these topics in a new light, and that some of you might be inspired to participate in this growing industry. And there will be opportunity for you. Between 2020 and 2021, the global space economy value rose 9% to $469 billion. It is expected to exceed $1 trillion by 2040. As a trillion-dollar industry, it will rival many of the top industries in the United States. And as we discussed throughout the course, the opportunities for growth remain vast. So thanks for joining me this week, and I will see you again next week for another episode of the Space Law and Policy podcast series.